Welcome to Late Night Story. When the world goes silent and shadows stretch longer, some stories awaken, whispered only to those still awake. So put on your headphones, turn down the lights, and let me guide you through the quiet hours. If you're listening alone, you're exactly where you need to be. If everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world, don't forget to subscribe before you drift too far into the dark.
Story 1. My favorite podcast has an episode about me. I've always been a huge fan of creepy things. Movies, books, art. Any form of scary story is like a drug to me. My grandma used to tell us stories from her childhood in Eastern Europe. She always claimed to have a sixth sense. She was able to see the dead and even speak with them on occasion. As I grew older, those things stuck with me and took new forms. I would binge horror movies whenever I got the chance, and I read book after book on any genre of ghost story. But life has a way of interrupting your hobbies. Before long, I was a student during the day and a full-time worker at night. I don't mind the work or even the hours, but it left very little time for me to indulge in my niche fascination. I work overnight at a grocery store. It's easy, but it's also soul-wrenchingly monotonous and boring most of the time. My job consists of moving, opening, unpacking, and then breaking down cardboard boxes for 8 hours. I would complain about how boring it was pretty often, until one of my co-workers asked me, "Why don't you just bring earbuds?" I was left speechless. I hadn't even considered that you could do that on the clock. I bought a $20 pair online the next day, and it arrived the following week. The sound wasn't great, and it was often drowned out by outside noises. But I didn't care. These things were the solution to my problem. I didn't need free time for the content. I enjoyed if I could enjoy it while I was on the clock. I started with audiobooks. They were long, which was perfect for getting me through a shift. But eventually I branched out a bit more. You'd be surprised how much horror content you can find on music apps. I went through horror podcasts, true crime analysis videos, and some old radio shows. A few of them were cheesy, sure, but they kept me awake and gave my brain something to chew on while my hands went on autopilot. Then one night, I stumbled across something unique. A horror anthology series that was very well narrated. Each episode followed a new protagonist, and each one had their own voice. It was like listening to someone tell me their own personal story as it happened, complete with sound effects. I listened to the first few and was immediately hooked. The stories varied in length, usually from 30 minutes to an hour and a half. But there were so many episodes, it would last me for weeks, maybe longer. I started to even look forward to shifts just to get back into the stories. The first story I remember being odd was titled, "The Man in the Freezing Field." Nothing too special. It wasn't even really a supernatural story. Just a man whose car broke down in the middle of nowhere during a snowstorm. He left the engine running to stay warm, but it died after a few hours. No cell service, no coat, just a thin sweater and a dying flashlight. Surprisingly, this story turned my stomach more than usual. I'm comfortable with monster, ghosts, and curses, but this story was just a graphic audio of someone narrating their own slow death. Crying, begging for help, shivering and shaking. Eventually, he just went quiet and the story ended. It was depressing. We had a walk-in freezer. Of course we did. Every grocery store has one. And I'd walked past that door 100 times before without a second thought. But now I kept glancing at it. Halfway through my shift, I walked by the back aisle on my way to crushed boxes. That's when I heard it. A quiet sob. Just once. So soft it very well could have imagined it. It could have been a box sliding against a slippery wall. Someone on the other side messing around. Anything. I knocked on the door just to be sure. When no answer came, I felt silly for entertaining the idea. I went about the rest of the day and forgot about it. Things went smoothly for a while. The story had rattled me, and so I took a break from the show for about a week. I listened to my usual audiobooks, Lovecraft, Blackwood, and Mar James. a sort of comfort food for my nerves. But I couldn't resist. I was hooked, and it wasn't long before I queued up the next episode of the podcast. This one was called The Break Room. I was on my usual 2 a.m. lunch. The overhead lights buzzed, and the vending machine compressor kicked on every few minutes. The tile floor always felt a little sticky no matter how many times it was mopped, and the plastic chairs had that slight bend in the middle that made you wonder if they were one sit away from snapping. This place really spared expenses when it came to employees. When the narrator described his break room, I chuckled. Same flickering lights, same creaky vending machine, same sad microwave with a splatter-covered ceiling. It felt like a parody of my own life. I microwaved one of those soggy frozen burritos and sat in the usual plastic chair under the buzzing light. Same smell of disinfectant and instant noodles as always. The story started slow, just a guy talking about the quiet, about how break rooms always feel lonelier at night. He mentioned the hum of the vending machine, the faded safety posters, the grease stain on the ceiling shaped like a dog's head. Then he said something that made me stop chewing. There's a moment about halfway through the night when you feel like you're the only person in the building, but you're wrong. There's always someone else in the break room first. I didn't understand what that meant at first. I glanced around. Just me, my burrito, and the flickering light above the fridge. Then clack. A single plastic fork slid off the table across from me and hit the floor. There hadn't been anyone else on break. I hadn't heard the chair shift or anything. Just the sound of the fork dropping like it had been set there, not like it had fallen from the edge. I stood up and looked around. Nothing. No one. But that chair across from me was slightly pulled out. Just slightly. I turned off the podcast and finished my break in silence. Things have only gotten worse since. I feel like I'm losing my mind. A story about a home invasion escalating to murder. The victim drowned in their own washing machine. It was accompanied in reality by clattering from the cleaning aisle and the faint smell of wild berry soap. A story about a woman who couldn't sleep because something kept brushing her hair at night. She locked every door, sealed every window, but still woke with knots in her hair and dirt on her pillow. As I stood in the break room mirror, adjusted my hat, a single black hair, not mine, fell onto my shoulder. A story about a kid who learned his reflection could blink on its own. Eventually, it started making faces he wasn't. When I went to the restroom that night, the mirror was fogged up even though the hot water hadn't been working. I understand it's dumb, but I started competing with them, trying to save the fictional victim anytime I could. A story about a kid getting sucked into a TV. I turned it off and covered the screen with a tarp. A story about a man who vanished after opening a strange cardboard box. I crushed every empty box twice that night, just in case. A story about a kid being stalked in their backyard. I turned every motion light on behind the building and stood watch at the back loading dock. Not once did I succeed. I felt like if I could just outsmart it, something would happen. It would stop. I needed to win this game, to solve this puzzle. It became such an obsession that I would review stories I had listened before over and over, correcting myself and making note of things I could have done differently. Eventually, I came to the last episode. One last chance to win, to accomplish something. I don't know. I just needed this. But I never expected this. I had been so focused on the victims of the story that I hadn't intended on saving myself. The title of the last episode was my name, first and last. I felt my heart sink when I saw it. I felt weak, clammy as if I had a fever. Then, it's 1:41 a.m. I'm sitting in the break room. I froze. The voice wasn't mine this time, but it was close. Just off enough to sound like a bad impersonation, like someone who had been studying me. There's a burrito in the microwave. I didn't notice yet that it stopped spinning. My head turned instinctively. The microwave was still humming, the numbers ticking down, but I could tell it wasn't working. The inside was cold. I blinked. My hands were numb. I wasn't breathing. I hear the door lock. I'm stuck. I stood up fast, heart pounding, and turned toward the break room door. It happened before I could reach it. Click. The lock slid shut. I lunged for the handle and twisted. Nothing. It didn't even rattle. The lock had never been that stiff before. I jiggled it again, harder this time. Still nothing. The voice in my earbuds continued, calm as ever. I tried the handle again. Twice more. I stopped moving. My chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. I could feel sweat prickling at the back of my neck. There was a moment of silence, dead air, like the story was waiting for me to catch up, to decide what kind of character I wanted to be. I'm thinking of taking the earbuds out, but I won't, and I didn't, because I was afraid of what I might hear instead. I paced the break room back and forth, eyes fixed on the floor tiles like I might spot an exit I'd somehow missed. The earbuds hissed. Then I start pacing. I stopped. No. I needed it to be wrong. I stood still. I stopped pacing. My stomach turned. The voice was steady now, more confident. It didn't sound like an impersonation anymore. It sounded like me. I checked the window, even though I already know it doesn't open. My head turned toward the narrow break room window, unintentionally seeing that it was indeed stuck shut. The glass was fogged. Outside, only the empty parking lot, what with recent rain, glowing under the orange floodlights. I tried the window latch. Locked. The podcast continued. I stare at my reflection. I don't recognize the eyes. Before I could fulfill this prediction, I squeezed my eyes shut and turned away. I let out one short laugh of triumph. I thought I had won our game of Simon Says, but the laugh caught in my throat. The podcast hadn't paused. I laugh, it said without emotion, but only for a second. My blood turned cold. I think I won. I think I'm in control again. I reached for the earbuds, still in my ears, still connected. The app was open. I don't realize yet the reflection is still watching. Against every instinct, I turned, just a glance back toward the window, and I saw it. My reflection hadn't turned away with me. It was still staring, still facing forward. It no longer moved synchronously with me. It smiled. The episode ended with one last line from a voice that sounded so much like me. I don't realize yet that I'm almost out of time. I haven't realized it's only learning. Soon it will hollow me like bark and climb inside my skin. As it spoke, my reflection held up one of its hands, stretching out its fingers as if showing them to me. I crushed my earphones, snapped my phone in half, and threw them in the trash compactor. As soon as I did, it heard the lock click again. Relief flooded me. Whatever supernatural nightmare I was a part of had ended when I destroyed my phone. I didn't wait for my shift to end. I went home and slept, beyond relieved that it was over. I had survived the night. It's always been that way. It always ends when I go home. It's never left the store with me. But when I looked into the mirror this morning, my reflection was smiling at me. It hadn't moved since last night. Same posture, same stare. There was just one exception. It held up 4 fingers. Story 2. My cat is afraid of me. It wasn't always this way. When I adopted Gerald as a kitten, he acclimated to my little one-bedroom duplex right away. Not a trace of timidity. He's about 1 year old now, a sleek orange tabby with white paws who gets into more trouble than I can manage. I've caught him climbing curtains, knocking over glasses of water, and sending embarrassing keyboard smash messages to my co-workers by napping on my open laptop. Normal, well-adjusted cat behavior. This week, he started to avoid me. I first noticed it at meal times. When I filled his dish on Monday morning, I was met with an empty kitchen. Gerald is usually a demanding little fellow, yowling and circling my legs all the way to the kitchen. I figured maybe he was still napping somewhere else in the house. When I checked later that evening, the bowl was empty, but once again, he did not come running when I refilled the dish. So this became our routine. I just scooped his portion, gave the bowl a shake to rattle the pellet around, and made myself scarce. It wasn't until I left the room that he would creep out of hiding and begin eating. I was glad to know he wasn't starving, at least, but I can't say I wasn't a little hurt. Next, I noticed how he acted around me. Before things changed, He would make himself at home on my lap every time I sat down to do some computer work or watch TV, rubbing his cheek against my face. It was almost irritating how affectionate that cat was. I miss it now, starting that fateful Monday. Whenever I'd enter a room, Gerald acted like some foreign threat had just entered the house. Fur spiked, back arched, he would creep away at an angle so as to keep me in his sight. Once, I tried to coax him out of his sudden terror with a handful of treats. As soon as I got within a foot of him, a low growl rose in his throat. He bolted into the next room, where I found him perched at the top of his cat tree, just out of my reach. He stayed up there for the rest of the night. I only heard him bumping around the house again once I'd gone to bed. I work as a university professor, so I'm usually gone for most of the day. If I know I'll be staying late to finish some grading or hold office hours, I'll often call up my sister, who I refer to as Laura, to ask if she or one of my nephews can drive over to check on Gerald. He's still an adolescent and full of energy. I worry about him getting bored and stir crazy when he's alone for too long. On Tuesday, I had back-to-back meetings after class, followed by a mountain of essays to grade. It was going to be a long day, so I called up Laura in the morning. She agreed without hesitation. "Don't stay too late tonight," she added. "You need to rest more, Cam." She was probably right. I hadn't been sleeping well recently. I had been suffering from vivid nightmares and sleep paralysis. At some point almost every night, a horrible compressing sensation would start in my chest and crawl up my throat. I'd wake up gasping for air. At the time, I chalked it up to a recent breakup and the stress of preparing my students for exam season. I was about to hang up when I remembered how strange Gerald had been acting. By the way, Gerald's been kind of skittish recently. I added as I locked the house and got into my car. Don't be offended if he doesn't come out right away. Anyway, spare keys in the usual place. Let yourself in. I thanked her again and headed to work. Later that evening, just as I was leaving my last meeting, I noticed a new voicemail. It was from Laura. She sounded chipper as always, but I could tell she was choosing her words very carefully. I know my sister. Something was off. "Hey, Cammy. Just calling to say that the kitty's doing fine. Me and the boys stopped by after school to play with him. He's such a joy. I wanted to ask something. Did you happen to stop by the house before your meetings today? We saw someone leaving out the back door as we were pulling up, but your car wasn't in the driveway. It's probably nothing, but I thought I'd ask. Have a good night." I felt a pang of anxiety in my chest. I hadn't been home since the morning. It could have been a delivery driver, but I wasn't expecting any packages. Maybe she'd seen my neighbor leaving their side of the duplex and mistaken for mine. Laura hadn't mentioned anything being amiss inside, so it couldn't have been a burglar. I tried to convince myself of this, but the tension didn't leave my shoulders as I finished out the day and drove home. When I pulled into my driveway, all the lights were on inside. The kids probably forgot to turn them off when they left. I thought. I was still on edge. I crept up to the door slowly, listening for activity on the other side. I didn't hear anything at all. The quiet did nothing to comfort me. Usually Gerald would hear the rumble of my car and rush to the door or window to greet me on my way in. I was reaching for my keys when I heard it, a rattling. Good. I thought at first Gerald is eating something, but it was too purposeful to be a cat pushing pellets around. It was gentle, precise. A light shake followed by silence. Then it would repeat. Someone was rattling my cat's food dish. As quietly as I could manage, I put my keys down and crept over to the kitchen window. The curtains obscured most of my view, but through the sliver in between I could see a person standing there on the tiles, mostly turned away. As I suspected, they were hunched forward, holding out the metal cat dish and gently shaking it to as to coax the cat out of hiding. Gerald was huddled in the corner of the kitchen, frozen in place. The stranger was barefoot, with long, matted hair that hung down their back in tangled clumps. Then I noticed what they were wearing. They had on nondescript gray sweatpants, the kind I only wear when I have nowhere else to be. At first glance, their shirt was just a plain purple tee, but reading the bold white text on the back, my stomach dropped. It was my last name. That was my game shirt from last year's staff kickball tournament. The stranger in my kitchen was wearing my clothes. I sank down beneath the windowsill and dialed 911. I ran back to my car, locking myself inside as I waited for the operator to pick up. 911, what's your emergency? The woman on the line answered. There's someone in my house. I whispered, my throat closing up. Looking back, I should have thought to drive away at that point. But the truth is, I was more terrified for Gerald than myself. My cat was stuck in there with whoever was inside, and I had no idea what their intentions were. Ma'am, can you speak up? I managed to get my breathing under control. There's a stranger in my house, I said, keeping my voice low. Someone broke in. I stayed on the line for a few more minutes to give my address. As the responder took down my information, I saw the back door swing open. The stranger stepped down the wooden stairs slowly. I couldn't help but think that they moved like a baby deer, legs wobbling, each step as slow and measured as if it was their first. The person craned their head from side to side as if looking for witnesses. As they turned their head in my direction, I finally caught sight of their face. I saw me. I don't know how else to say it. The stranger wore my face. The same nose, same dark brows and thin lips. Even the small port wine stain on her or my left cheek. The woman's eyes were wider and shinier than mine, though, holding a blank, inscrutable expression I have only seen on prey animals or very young infants. For a split moment, I think I felt something like pity for this wretched creature. She looked so lost, and yet so viscerally, evolutionarily wrong. She opened her mouth as she saw me. She made a noise, something between a cry and a shout, a half-formed word meant for me. As she wailed, black bile dribbled down her chin. I don't know what came over me then. Perhaps some survival instinct or panic response. All I can remember thinking is that this thing was not human and that it needed to get as far away from me as possible. I slammed the horn, screaming at her the way one yells at a bear to spook it from a campsite. I turned on the engine, revving it as loud as I could. The woman who wore my face turned and scampered from my backyard like a spurned animal, clambering over the chain-link fence and disappearing into the darkness. After I was sure she had gone, I went inside to check on Gerald. He was unharmed, washing his paw casually as if nothing had happened at all. That is, until I got too close. He still doesn't trust me. I can tell. With great difficulty, I managed to get him into his cat carrier. Then I threw a toothbrush and some clothes into a bag, grabbed Gerald's carrier, and left for my sister's place across town. Despite the short notice, Laura set up their fold-out couch for me as soon as I explained my night from hell. I even told her about the face. Though she didn't say a thing to discredit my story, I can tell that she thinks my interpretation of events is altered by stress and lack of sleep. I appreciate her listening anyway. As for the stranger, I know she's out there somewhere. When the cops finally showed up at my home, though they didn't find a thing, no trace of foreign DNA in my home, no tracks or damage left behind. This whole situation makes me feel crazy. I haven't been back since. I know I'll have to return eventually to collect my things. Until then, I've called in sick from work for the next few days to get my head on straight. I'm posting my story to this forum as a vent, I guess, a way to get out of my system. No one else believes me, but why would they? I can't think of a single rational explanation for what I saw that day. And as for Gerald, I've tried to make peace with him again. I stocked up on his favorite wet food, switched out his toys, and even bought some fresh catnip. The other day, he came close enough to sniff my hand. I'll call that a win. Otherwise, he's the same lovable ball of energy as always. He loves playing with Laura's kids, and even the family dog. Still, the fact remains, my cat is afraid of me. Story 3. I took a job at a used car lot, but something sinister is happening. For context, I've been in retail for years. Sometimes I've been the manager, other times the low man on the block. I don't know if any of you know the feeling, but retail is soul-crushing work. Usually it's not hard. Even when it is, it's much better than other jobs, but it wears on you quickly. I had reached my limit when I began searching for a different gig. I have a pretty decent resume, so applied to tons of jobs. I was particular, though, desperately trying to get out of retail. Fast forward 4 months, and I hadn't gotten a single call back. I felt extremely defeated and stuck, to say the least. One evening, I decided to go for a drive just to get out of my apartment and clear my head. I headed toward the far end of my town. Just relaxing, I live in the southern tip of my town, and to get all the way to the next county, it takes about 40 minutes. Near the line, I saw something new. Just off the right side of the main road, I saw what looked like a new street. There was no street lights, no painted lines. Yet, as I got closer, I saw that it was indeed new pavement. Curiosity got the best of me, and I turned onto it. It was very dark under the canopy of trees, which loomed overhead and seemed to knit together in the middle. For some reason, this raised a hair on my neck. I thought, fuck it, and kept driving. This new road meandered through the forest, never straight. Before long, the trees opened up, and there it was. Settled in what had to be the heart of the forest was a brand new car lot. There were balloons, neon signs, and one of those wacky tube guys flailing in a phantom breeze produced by its own fan. Totally normal wear for a car lot, except there were no cars. I slowed my Honda and pulled in to take a minute and turn around. I didn't see anyone around. The lights were on inside, and though it was a small building, I got the feeling it was hiding something terrible inside. Weird, I know, but I just had a bad feeling. You know what I mean? Like one of those liminal spaces people talk about. Seconds later, though I hate to admit it, I found myself screaming to the top of my lungs. Just outside my window, a rather lanky, tall man was knocking. He was in a cheap suit with dark hair slicked back and bright eyes peering at me. I gathered my wits and rolled my window down, ready to apologize for being here. "Hello, sir, how do you do?" he said to me before I could get a word out. "I'm perfectly fine, but I'm headed out. Sorry for stopping here." I told him. I was looking around like crazy, trying to plan how to quickly get away from the conversations. Then I saw a help wanted sign. I was just driving through looking for work, but I'm sorry to have bothered you, I said rather quickly. "That is just perfect," he almost seemed to roar. "I'm looking for a salesman. Come on out and let's talk." Before long, I found myself sitting down at his desk inside. We talked for a good long time. He offered me a great opportunity. If you've never been in the car business, it goes like this. Commission is your cut of sale. Front end is what the lot makes versus what they pay for the car, and back end is any fees you can tack onto the sale. A salesman gets a certain percentage of those aspects. Here, he offered me 50% commission. I have since learned that is almost unheard of in the car selling world. On top of that, he also granted me a salary of $65K, just to show up, as he put it. And the best part, I wasn't required to do any marketing. He told me the customers would come all on their own. Like I said, how could I refuse? I wish I had. Eventually, after I accepted, he told me to go home and get some rest. Not to worry about coming to work until Monday of next week. But he would start my salary as of now. I thought that was a little crazy, but I wasn't going to look a gift horse in the mouth. Now I found myself with a 4-day weekend and a well-paying job. I hadn't felt happiness ever like I felt in those 4 days. Monday rolled around and in I went. I got my own office. Hell, I had the whole place to myself. When I walked in, there was a note with my name on it and no one else around. The note was actually a list of rules, 5 to be exact. Rule number 1 was, don't go into the boss's office, ever. Number 2 was don't call the boss, ever. Number 3, don't question the boss. Number 4, if a customer comes looking for a car they saw from an ad, we have it, even if there are no cars on the lot. And number 5 was the weirdest one. Never turn your back to the boss's door. I was, of course, weirded out, but there was also a check attached to the note. A check for the full $65K salary. Rule number 2, don't call. So I didn't. I began to get comfortable. Shit, this was going to be the easiest job I've ever had. For nearly a month, there were no customers and no cars showed up to sell. I went in every day, played around on my phone, and backed out the doorway when I locked up in the evening. It was the last day of that first month when I finally had a customer. Being there by myself, I was honestly kind of worried. I hadn't been trained, but I was going to try and help them if I could. The customer had arrived in an almost brand new Cadillac, so I had no idea what they may want. I let him get out and come to the door. Before I could even say hello, I heard the office across from mine open up. As I shifted to see what was going on, the boss was standing right beside me. He vehemently shook our first customer's hand and ushered him into his office. Before going inside himself, he came to me. "You are doing excellent, young man. Every rule followed to a T. Why don't you go on home for the day? Here is your check," he said with a large, toothy grin. I looked down and was shocked to see another large check. This one was for the amount of $75K. "What is?" I began to say, but quickly shut up. No questions to the boss. I don't know why I blindly followed these rules, but I was being paid a ridiculous amount, so might as well. He smiled, which sent a chill down my back, and said he just knew I would sell one today, so my monthly paycheck had been increased to include my commission. Yep, you read that right. I was getting at minimum $65K a month. Like, holy hell, this is massive life-changing money. You best believe I shut walked backwards to the front door, and left. That was almost 6 months ago. You would be surprised to learn that the almost new Cadillac was sitting on our lot, priced and ready to sell by the next morning. This happened no less than 5 times a month following the first time. I was making massive amounts of money. Life outside of work was amazing. But I never forgot that the boss was in his office all the time. The odd rules, the strange feeling the place gave me, it was beginning to make me feel nauseous. Every time we had a customer come in, they were almost always driving brand new cars. I never got the chance to speak to them, and the boss would send me home early. The vehicles were always on the lot, ready to sell by the next morning. Life was great, until about a month ago. Our customer count has really skyrocketed. I'm talking 15 to 20 people a day. People I recognize from town. Our lot was beyond full. See, none of the cars being left behind are ever sold. Even though our influx of business kept growing, the thought that something odd is going on is almost overwhelming at this point. That feeling is worse knowing that I've seen less and less people around town since we started getting busy. Hell, it's almost like everyone has left. 3 days ago, I hit a breaking point when I came in and saw some heavy machinery stacking the cars on top of each other. How in the hell are we supposed to sell half-crushed cars? I had had enough. I went into the office and immediately broke a rule by knocking on the boss's door. On the last knock, the door opened on its own, revealing a dim-lit room with nothing inside. The boss was not there. Nothing was there. Nothing. Then I broke another rule. I called him. Shocker here, but the line never rang. I got an automated message saying the phone number was disconnected. Strike 3 was when I turned my back to the door and walked to my desk. As I turned to sit, the boss was sitting at my desk. Yet again, I began to scream before calming down enough to laugh out loud. "You know, I thought you were smarter than this. Do I not keep you comfortable enough?" he said, with that sickening smile on his face again. "Yes, sir, you do. How can we sell stacked cars? We haven't sold a single one anyways. But we can't sell stacked cars, can we?" I blurted out. I have no qualms in saying I was scared. His eyes darkened as I slid into my chair. His frown is worse than his grin. He told me that I had broken all the important rules but one. He said he was disappointed. My punishment was to be present during his next sell. He said it was my turn to learn. Like I said, that was 3 days ago. We haven't had another customer yet, but I'm terrified. Shit, I gotta get off of here. A car just pulled up and the boss's door just opened. Story 4. She said she could bring my baby back. All I had to do was feed what's in the basement. When our little boy came into this world, the last thing my husband and I were thinking about was that in just over 6 months, he would be dead. Our little man had breathing problems when he was born. They put him straight into the incubator for 48 hours. That was hard to watch. The terror you feel as a new parent is unmatched in those moments of staring your child's death in the face. You have had this little alien growing inside you for so long. You are its sole life force, and now you stare at it, wondering if it was all for nothing. We finally brought him home from the hospital, pink and ready to give us hell for the next 18 years. Probably longer. I so wish for longer. Around 6 months later, there was a night where I just felt off, like something was wrong in our home's air. Mother's intuition, I suppose. I wish I had followed my gut, but I was just so tired. I went to sleep that night and was not waking for anything or anyone. Other parents will know how horrible and real sleep deprivation is. There's a reason that it's used as an effective torture method. You will do anything, spill all the world's secrets just for a little bit of sleep. We had finally put our boy in another room around a week before this particular night, primarily because my husband snores like an elephant. It was so disruptive to the point that the dog began sleeping in the living room. It was the first night I slept completely through in weeks. When I woke up that morning, I rolled over and felt rejuvenated in my mind, but my body felt tense. I felt that off feeling again and checked my phone. It was well past the time my son would normally wake. I checked the monitor, and my stomach dropped into an endless pit. The feeling when you're on a roller coaster, about to slam back into earth. He was lying face down, not moving. My heart rate rose like it was pumping on pure jet fuel. I don't exactly remember what happened next. Just snippets, fractures in time. I remember looking at the door to his room and hovering over the handle. I remember standing barefoot on his rug that I had slept on many nights before. I then found myself sitting on the rocking chair in the corner of his room, milk streaming out of me as I put his blue lips up to my warm skin. I rocked and swayed and whispered, "Wake up, baby, come on now, Bubba, wake up, please." But he never did. At this point, I must have screamed, because my husband ran in. Thinking back, I feel sorry for him having to be exposed to the scene and also angry at him, all at the same time. The last thing I remember was the paramedics trying to gently pry him from my hands. I put in a fight. My nails dug deep into his sleep sack, and I snarled like some rabid animal. The next few weeks were also a bit of a blur. We found out the cause, Sid's sudden infant death syndrome. He rolled himself over in the middle of the night, and I was too sleep-deprived and noticed him suffocating in the bedsheet. I didn't know they made child-sized coffins. That was a shock. Well, I guess I did, but I never had thought about it. It was so small, so delicate. They lowered it into the hole, and that was the end of my life as I knew it. There was no redeeming, no coming to terms, no coming out of this hole, no reason to anymore. My husband and I were not strong enough to begin with, and the fights after this were so intense that it led to his insisting that I go to a support group for other mothers who had gone through something similar. After a while of him insisting, he demanded with a divorce threat attached. I finally agreed. I knew I needed some help. I wasn't like one of these people in denial. I knew what happened and that it was my fault. The support group was filled mostly with other grieving mothers whose kids had succumbed to cancer. Another lady had her son pass in a car crash, his body so mangled that they wouldn't even let her see him. Mine seemed like the most peaceful, which made me feel sick that others had it worse. Even though my insides were rotting, I didn't say much. I sat there listening, mostly. But out of respect, I did share my name and briefly what happened, mentioning what I remembered anyway. The reason he was in there in the first place. The blue lips covered in breast milk, the paramedics. The others looked at me like mine wasn't raw enough, horrific enough. I felt it too, except for one older lady. She looked genuinely gutted for me. It felt nice, once it finished, and everyone started to disperse. I made my way to a little table with assorted sandwiches and cheap coffee. I stared at it for a long time. Probably not a good idea for them to have strawberry jam seeping out of the open bread, like a mini crime scene. A hand grabbed onto my shoulder, and I spun around in fright. And that's when I met her, Marla. She would have been in her late 40s, maybe early 50s. You could tell just by looking at her that she has had a hard life. She has seen things behind those eyes, real haunting pain. She smiled at me like she had a deep understanding of what I was going through, and I started crying immediately. It was bizarre. I didn't understand it. And she pulled me in for a hug like an old friend I haven't seen in years. We stayed like that for far too long, but I didn't want to let go. There was something about her, some sort of energy radiating from inside that made everything feel like it was going to be okay. We went for a walk together after, along the street and into the park. We sat on a bench and watched some other kids playing in the playground. After sitting there in silence for a while, she said, "I know what happened, you know." I looked at her, a little taken aback. "Sorry, I know that you're beating yourself up over this, but it's not your fault. I know that, and I think you do too." I sat back and looked forward, lip quivering, and let her continue. "I know your husband is to blame for this tragedy. I know that's harsh, but I'm just being honest." I stood up and went to walk off, wiping away a tear, but then she said something that stopped me in my tracks. "There is a way for your little boy to come back, you know." I slowly turned around, ready to go off on this lady. She stood and put her hands up in mock surrender. I think she could see the fire behind my eyes. She quickly added, "Please believe me, there are ways. We have done it before. We have done it, and successfully too. Please let me help you." I put my head in my hands and continued my breakdown. "Why are you doing this to me? You're sick." I screamed at her. She rushed up and grabbed me tight. I was shocked, confused, everything, all at once. I grabbed her and squeezed aggressively. "Why are you doing this to me? Who are you?" She hugged me tightly, like a wall slowly crushing me. But it somehow calmed me. She whispered into my ear, "I know you don't know me, but it will only work if you trust me. Do you trust me? You need to be 100% on board." I pulled away slowly and looked her up and down. She was smartly dressed, like she had just come from a local country club, not some cauldron-stirring witch. And weirdly, I did trust her. I really did think she was telling the truth as she knew it. Anyway, we walked some distance together while she explained the process to me. She would need something of my boy's, his favorite cuddly, a piece of clothing, anything that would still have a bit of him left on it. She would take this for a few days. Then at the next women's group meeting, she would give this back to me, and I was to put it into the basement and lock the door until she gave me the next step. I did everything she asked. Once she returned the stuffed lamb he slept with, it went into the basement. I didn't tell my husband. What would I say? I didn't tell anyone about this. I didn't question it myself. In my mind, it was harmless. If it worked, by some miracle, I would get my baby boy back. And if this lady was crazy, which I suspected almost certainly had to be the case, then I wasn't losing anything, was I? A few nights passed and nothing happened, and I thought I had been duped. I felt like an idiot, until I heard a noise coming from the basement. I was sleeping this night, and awoke to a chill in the air. It was as if my husband, now sleeping permanently in the guest bedroom, had blasted the AC just to torture me some more. I got it to turn off, and heard an odd noise. It was coming from the basement. The noise was like a newborn crying into a pillow, muffled and faint. With my phone light out, I slowly made my way past the aircon panel, which was turned off, then headed toward the basement door. I was shaking and trying my best to steady my breathing. The floorboard squeaked below me, and the crying stopped. I gently put my ear up to the cold door, and went to open it when my husband grabbed my shoulder. "Shit!" I yelled at him as I jumped around, grabbing my chest. He looked at me like I was a runaway mental patient. For the first time, I saw true worry behind his eyes. He wrapped his arms around his body, hugging himself warm. "What the hell have you got the aircon on for?" "I didn't put on. I thought you did to piss me off." I joked, but he did not see it as funny. He shook his head and walked off, huffing and puffing. "You seriously need help, woman. Honestly, I don't know what to do anymore." I went to walk after him, to plead my case and argue, as always, but I felt like my feet were stuck. I let him go. Instead, I called Marla and whispered, letting her know what was happening. hoping she could make some light of this. I could feel her smiling on the other end of the line. Pure happiness in each word. "Oh, this is just such great news, hun. Now you feed it." The words were there, but wouldn't come out, only fragments. Sorry, I misspoke. You feed him, your baby boy. "Oh, this is just so wonderful." "Hold up, what do you mean? What is down there?" I asked, looking at the door. "Just follow my rules. Do not, under any circumstances, open the door until I tell you to. You understand that, right? Lock it and hide the key so your husband doesn't go in there. This is very important." I had forgotten about this crucial part. "Yes, of course." I lied. "Good. Now, you need to listen to that noise. Your milk will begin coming back in shortly. It's nature. Do not fight it. Pump and put in a Ziploc bag. Slide it under the door 4 to 5 times a day. Let him guide you with his noises. Let me know when there are any more occurrences." "What do you mean? What will happen? How will he get into the bag?" There were far too many questions and unknowns. "He will know what to do. Don't worry. As for the occurrences, you will know when it happens. I am so happy for you. Hun, get some sleep. This is going to be an exhausting but beautiful journey ahead." The line went dead. She was right. The next day I woke with sharp pain in my breast, like someone was stabbing me slowly with a butcher's knife. I looked down, and my shirt was drenched from the milk seeping out. My breasts were rock hard. During the night, my body must have responded to the faint cries. It was incredibly painful to touch. It happened far quicker than last time. My husband never questioned anything during the next week. I was pumping in the bathroom, door locked and with the shower on, wanting to scream at the pain I was experiencing. I don't know what my husband thought during this time, but he began staying even later at the office. We needed the money, and eventually he began sleeping a few nights at his parents' house. He said it was closer to the office, which it was, but I could see what was happening. I didn't care. This just gave me more of a chance to express in comfort. I was well aware of how crazy this all sounded, but the crying, it sounded just like his perfect little cry. It was his cry. Even my body knew it. My husband packed up and left around a month later. I didn't blame him. By this point, I had gone a little nuts. I remodeled the baby's room and got it back looking like a newborn was about to occupy it. I bought new clothes and replaced some of the toys we gave away. I gave in and told him about what I was doing. There was no hiding it anymore. He packed his bag so fast that I don't think he really packed anything he needed. He was moving back full-time with his parents while he sorted out what he wanted to do. How he looked at me was so horrible, like I was disgusting. His eyes told me that he didn't know me anymore. I was doing this for him, as well as myself. He was going to get our baby back, too. Why wouldn't he support me through this? It was for us to be whole again. He said that he couldn't hear the cries, but he just wasn't listening hard enough. They were there, but he just blanked them out because he was determined to move on. At one point, I even began doubting it all. I thought I was going crazy, but one day my doubts were crushed, and from then on I knew I was sane. I went and put some fresh milk under the door and found a single tooth, a little milk tooth. It was so small and sweet. I put it into its own little box. I was so excited. I couldn't sleep, so I sat by the door all night, just listening, sometimes singing lullabies, the stretching noises, the sweet cries and coos. I just wish I could open the door and go down there, cuddle him, and let it all be okay. The last call I had with Marla was just before the neighbor's kid went missing. She let me know that it was almost time. My baby was almost ready to come back to us, to this crazy world. There was just one more thing that needed to happen, a life for a life. He needed a body to come back into, a healthy vessel to occupy. I felt sick. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to kill her for putting me through all of this without telling me this final, horrific step first. I wanted to, but I couldn't. I didn't. I asked for more specifics. Maybe there was a workaround. My thoughts went dark, like, how long does a body last embalmed in a coffin? I could dig him up. She said it would only work with a live child. You wouldn't want your kid to look like they had been in a coffin for months, bugs eating holes in the skin. Now would you? She said. I almost spewed at the image in my mind. It made sense, but I also know what it feels like to lose your child. Surely I couldn't do that to another family, to another mother. I declined, and then she said something that chilled me to my core. Once the process has begun, there is no stopping it. You must finish, or what you create will be something you will regret for the rest of your life. I hung the phone up. I made my way back to my room, unsure about my future with this experiment. Then I started to hear scratching sounds coming from outside the basement door. He must have grown his little fingernails, which struck me as odd. It should not happen at this age. Not one's big enough to scratch the door like a manicat. I locked myself in my room, but could still hear the faint scratching noises all night. Then the crying began, and so did the milk. She was right. There was no stopping this. And today, coming home from the grocery store where I bought some more supplies, diapers and the like, I saw the police consoling and comforting the neighbors. My stomach dropped. Seeing her face transported me back to the morning I found my boy face first. I was about to vomit on my front steps and ran into the house, hoping to God they didn't see me. I slowly walked over to the basement door and sat against it. I could hear faint breathing, and then the cries started right on cue. I started pumping, mechanical and numb, milk hissing into the bottle. I sat there with no expression. It's where I am currently sitting now, still pumping, still waiting, still writing my story, still holding out to hold my boy again. The smell of roasting meat wafted from the kitchen, and Marla came into the doorway. "Don't worry about them," she said. "I will help them get their boy back, in good time. For now, just keep feeding him. You are doing amazing." Something thumped against the door behind me. Not a knock, more like a little skull testing the wood. Little fingers pushed through the gap near the floor. They were cold, slick, nails black with dirt. "Soon," Marla murmured, stirring her pot. "Your beautiful boy will be free. This one's growing faster than the last." Marla had started to hum a nursery rhyme, and he began humming it back from behind the door. I had not heard that one before. It's like it was something meant just for us. I smiled and leaned my head against the door, grabbing his fingers and whispering, "See you soon, my beautiful baby boy." The fingers curled tighter around mine and didn't let go. Story 6. The Never Mile. I grew up in a small town where you could drive the same road every day and swear it would never end. We called it the Never Mile. No one ever agreed where it began or ended. On the county maps, it's just a faded gray line, a perfect ruler stroke in the middle of nowhere. When I was a kid, my dad told me never to follow it at night. He said, "It doesn't like being looked at after dark. Not people, not drivers. Last week, I had to deliver some totes to a man outside of town. Local delivery work. Easy money. I picked him up from a rough-looking guy at a gas station around 11. After that, I planned to head home, crack a beer, and game for the rest of the day. The job paid $3,000. So I stocked up on beer and snacks. Enough to hold up for days. The address was 7 miles away, 30 minutes according to Waze. I saw the green route line stretch right over the Never Mile's faded gray, and my dad's warning flashed in my head. But it was still before noon. I'd be home by 1. I turned onto the Never Mile with music blasting. Pavement, trees, a distant farmhouse, a billboard, fresh double yellow lines. No sidewalk, just a dirt path on the shoulder. The sun straight in my eyes. Right as I nailed the chorus to feeling this, fate fell short this time. Your smile fades in the summer. The music cut out. My phone still showed it was playing, but there was no sound. The tires hummed louder. The air felt heavier, like a storm was coming. Though the forecast was clear, I think I knew then. The pavement looked new, but it had no smell. The farmhouse never got closer. The same billboard rolled past again and again. I'd been driving 10 minutes. It was a cracked, faded ad for a diner that closed decades ago. I knew because the owner died when I was in middle school. I checked the rear view. The same billboard was behind me. Same missing corner. Same graffiti over tasty cream pies. Same trees beyond it, both ahead and behind me. The car smelled like wet earth. Freshly dug. I kept going. 20 miles. 30. The sun didn't move. I saw a barefoot man walking the opposite way. Head down. 10 minutes later, I saw him again. Same pace. Same clothes. Only this time he passed me. I never slowed. His lips were moving, but I couldn't hear the words. By mile 50, I stopped checking Waze. It still said I was 1 mile away. I turned around. In the distance, another car turned too, facing me in the opposite lane, maybe 30 feet ahead. The driver was me. Same clothes, same hat, same scab from shaving that morning. I didn't feel my foot press the gas, but the car moved forward. So did he. His eyes stayed on the road, his lips moving like the barefoot man's. I rolled my window down as we passed each other. He was saying my name, our name, over and over. I hit the brakes. The rear view mirror showed nothing but empty road. The smell of wet earth filled my lungs. Ahead, the road shimmered. Not heat, more like a film reel stuttering. I stepped out. The asphalt was soft, cold. I took off my shoes and started walking the other way. Story 7. Code name, Primal. Prologue. The sound of alarms echoed throughout the entire building, so loudly that Dr. Sebastian couldn't hear anything but the painful beeping and the sound of his own footsteps. Carry him away from the nightmares lurking within. The red light from the alarms looked more menacing than ever, but the only thing Dr. Sebastian could think about was how desperately he needed to reach the safe room, or anywhere he might be protected from it. His bloody palm clutched his left shoulder, which bore a bite mark far too large to have come from any dog. It was painful, so excruciating, as if those very teeth were still piercing him even now. The agony overwhelmed his 46-year-old body, and he collapsed to the ground with a heavy thud. Gritting his teeth, he winced, barely able to breathe through the torment. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not ever. The perimeter was meant to be secure, and even if the subjects escaped, they were supposed to be prepared for situations like this. With a groan, he stood up, but his shoulder felt like it would fall from the rest of his body sooner or later. That's when the alarm stopped completely, and the whole building fell into silence. Because the normal lights were messed up, a backup system turned the lights back on, but it didn't make the situation any less terrifying. The building had once been filled not only with alarms, but also gunshots, screams, and the sounds and roars from their own creations. Now it was only a pit of death, where a human like him would only end up as a meal. He weakly stood up, but even his knees were barely holding him together. The bite must have inflicted some kind of poison, slowly damaging his entire system. But he wasn't sure. He had only just arrived, merely as an assistant from his old workplace, where he had worked as a doctor in times of need. His clumsy attempt to stand was at least successful, though he nearly lost his balance again. He glanced at his shoulder once more, then quickly looked away. It was a horrible sight. Still, he kept going, slowly making his way toward the safe room that was finally in view. The safe rooms, built with heavy steel doors capable of withstanding even a grenade explosion, were stocked with enough food, water, and communication systems. Systems he could only hope were still functional. His hope for safety, so close and almost within reach, was suddenly shattered by a sound that echoed through the building, sending chills down his spine. A screech, animalistic, almost normal in any other context, but here, absolutely terrifying. It was followed by another, identical in tone. Not evil, not malicious, just a natural sound. But it came from something unnatural, from a mouth that should never have existed. Upon realizing the source of sound, his heartbeat quickened even more. With every ounce of strength he had left, he began to walk, weakly at first, then faster, toward the door. But strangely the screeches, as intimidating as they were to him, began to fade. They didn't stop abruptly. They dissolved into the void, as if whatever was making them was retreating, growing more distant with each passing second. Sebastian nearly stumbled as he finally reached for the door handle. The cold steel against his palm jolted him awake, grounding him in the moment. The silence behind him was reassuring. No more screeches, no more echoes. But when he tried to open the door, it didn't budge. It was locked, or jammed. Either way, his sanctuary was just inches away, and still out of reach. His eyes widened, and he tried to move the handle again, this time more forcefully, almost desperately. It didn't budge an inch. He attempted to open it with both hands, but as he tried to lift his left arm, a wave of agony shot through his entire body. It wasn't just his shoulder anymore. He could barely move his entire left hand. He cried out in pain and clutched his shoulder, only for his body to respond with another surge of torment that forced him to lean against the wall, nearly collapsing. Tears streamed down his face as he looked toward the door. With what little strength he had left, he crawled weakly toward it, using only one hand. He managed to knock twice, loudly, his voice trembling with fear and desperation as he called out. "Please," he said with trembling voice. "Is anybody in there? Open the door, please." He banged on the door again, though this time weakly. Open the fucking door. But the only answer he received was his own echo. At least it was supposed to be, because just as all hope drained from him, and he raised his hand to bang on the door once more, he heard it. Open the door. His own words. But they sounded like they came from a broken radio, or from a person who has trouble speaking properly. They didn't come from his lips anymore, nor from behind the door. They came from behind him. Dread began to creep over Sebastian, and the only thing he managed was to turn his head slightly behind him. And there he saw it, a creature, a dinosaur, a young, but still not small, Dilophosaurus. Its body was carried by two strong, tall hind legs. Its skin was gray with small black lines, and its front limbs were long, ending in three sharp, slender claws. Its back was covered with something that looked like feathers. It was around 6 meters long and 2.5 meters tall, but its size wasn't the scariest part. What made this predator terrifying was that it seemed to be something more than a mere dinosaur, the way it looked at Sebastian, or rather, the way it didn't, because it probably wasn't looking at him at all. It was simply aware of his presence. Where its eyes should have been, there were nothing but medium-sized black holes. Its mouth was closed, yet its sharp teeth remained visible, jagged and menacing. It was monstrous. For a moment, Sebastian forgot the pain. The sheer sight of the creature in front of him consumed every thought. And then, a clicking sound echoed from the Dilophosaurus's mouth. Its head tilted to the side, unnaturally slow, and its jaws parted just enough to reveal rows of razor-sharp teeth. Teeth that looked like they could tear through flesh as easily as a knife through butter. It looked like it could attack at any second, and yet it didn't. Sebastian had no idea what to do. The only thing he wanted was to get as far away as possible from this creature that was supposed to be a dinosaur. And then all the lights went out, not just in the room, probably in the entire building. Everything, Sebastian, the hallway, the creature, was swallowed by complete pitch-black darkness. And then the same screeches, louder and more sinister, began to echo throughout the entire building. They were so loud it felt as if they were right next to him, as if the pain in his body wasn't enough. His ears began to ache, and he could feel blood dripping down from them. He managed to cover one ear with his hand, but the screeches continued. At first, they were overwhelming. Then, slowly, they began to fade. Down and down and down, as if whatever was making them was moving farther and farther away. Followed up by silence. Yet again, Sebastian, breathing heavily, pulled his hand away from his ear, but his breath was growing shallow. The ringing in his ears left him dazed and disoriented. What happened? Did it leave? Did it run away? He wondered. Did it lose interest? Click. A guttural roar shattered silence. Footsteps thundered toward him. The Dilophosaurus burst into view, its mouth wide open. Sebastian could do nothing but scream, in terror, in pain, as its teeth sank deep into his face. The sounds of flesh being torn, bones snapping like dry twigs, screams of agony echoing through the halls. These were the only sounds, for the reaming, terrified souls hiding behind the door, frozen, silent, praying they wouldn't be next. Story 8. Rules for the thrumming. Houses, like people, have their own little quirks, personalities. Even two houses with an identical floor plan will eventually gain their own unique details, like twins. These quirks at home become just another part of the day. The light that only turns on when you hit the wall just right. The shower that freezes your bones with one unfortunate toilet flush. You get it. At worst, these quirks may be annoying, sometimes costly to fix, but other times, some would argue they build character. So what if I told you a home could get a malignant quirk? Sounds ridiculous, right? I thought so too, but with what I've encountered these past few months, and the body on my bathroom floor right now, I'd be ignorant to say that my house doesn't have something deeply wrong with it. Let me explain. My wife Linda and I were tired of renting apartments. We were potentially wanting to start a family. So after a few years of saving, it was time to look for that dream home of ours. We loaded up in the sedan, ready to visit a few houses that caught our eye, when my wife uttered the worst sentence I could imagine. You ready to drive over to my mother's? Okay, listen to me. I know it's cliche to hate your mother-in-law. I get it. Here's the thing. I don't care. I hate Ruth. The less I talk about her, the lower my blood pressure gets. Unfortunately, she's a really good realtor, so it only makes sense to go with her to help secure a house. It really doesn't help when you live in a small city either. There's not a lot of options, you know? I still wasn't happy with the choice. She sticks her nose into all of our business and absolutely hates everything about me. She once tried to get my wife to break up with me for a random cashier. 7 years into our relationship, that woman's never seen a day beyond misery. But my wife insists that she remains in our lives, and because I love my wife, I hold my tongue. I only wish Ruth would hold hers. So, we pulled up to Ruth's house, and of course, she's wearing her finest scowl, which only deepens when she makes eye contact with me. She took her time to enter the back seat. My wife beamed at her, trying to lighten the mood. Hey, Mom, we have about 3 houses we want to look at. Is that still the plan for today? Ruth nodded approvingly. Yes, dear. I want to make sure you don't choose a house in some rundown neighborhood. You can never be too careful these days. They'll sell you a house with a painted tarp for a roof. Ruth. I cleared my throat and acknowledged her presence. Her demeanor shifted immediately. Samuel, you're radiant today. You're late. My wife's hand on my leg told me I couldn't fire back with whatever I was going to say. So I didn't, and instead made the decision to get the car in gear over to the first house. We pulled up to a 3-bed, 2-bathroom home with a freshly maintained lawn and a new coat of dazzling white paint. Touring the place, it seemed fine enough until Ruth explained there were 8 offers on the house already. It's practically already sold, were her words. The second place was technically a steal for the price, even though it was a little bit of a fixer-upper, though Ruth just had to chime in. It's too much work for Samuel. You're going to be swimming in half-finished projects in a half-finished house. She scoffed, placing herself in the back seat. I don't think it's unsalvageable, Ruth. With a little bit of time, I could probably dash. You said the same thing about painting your living room. That took you, what, several months? My hands instinctively went to pinch between my eyes. We had to get permission from our landlord. On top of that, I broke my leg. She threw her hands up, focusing on my wife. All I'm saying is that if he couldn't paint some walls, I don't have high hopes for that one. Whether she was referring to the home or me, I couldn't tell. The last house was a further drive from the rest. As the suburb gave way to nature, Ruth filled us in. I'm not so sure about this one, but I know Linda's tastes. The owner seems very old school. He says he wants to be a part of the whole process. He'll be giving us a tour of the house. She squinted through her glasses to look at her notes. Clearly there must be something wrong with it. It's way under market. Eventually, we found ourselves at the house, nestled snug in a blanket of trees, though simple in design. Looking at the weather vane on the roof and the rocking chair on the porch, my wife and I could tell this home had character. We were admiring the outside knickknacks when an older gentleman stepped out from the front door. His appearance reminded me of an old sheriff character straight from a western. His mustache wiggled as he spoke. "You here to take a look around?" His voice carried a roughness tempered by experience. "Yes, sir. You the owner?" I held my hand out to shake his. He nodded and reciprocated. "Yes, sir. Been the owner for about 25 years. Give or take." He invited the three of us into a home that was probably cozy in another lifetime. Two gaudy recliners sat in front of an old CRT TV in a conversation pit. A deer's head was mounted above the fireplace, staring vacantly across the room. A shag rug dominated most of the living room territory. No one had informed this household that the 1970s were over. From the looks of it, no one had cleaned since the 70s either. A thick layer of dust coated just about everything. Normally, most people would take one look at a place like this in disgust and turn on their heel out the door. My wife and I, however, had weird tastes. By the glimmer in my wife's eyes, I could tell she loved the aesthetic just as much as I did. Ruth was too busy sneering at a family of ceramic ducks on a shelf to voice her distaste. We were all jostled to life by the owner when he cleared his throat. "Kitchen's this way. Hope you like yellow." Well, to simply say the kitchen was yellow would be like describing Godzilla as a pretty big lizard. With cabinets, yellow countertops, and floral tile, this house could have been a set for a sitcom, just switching over to color TV. Despite its age, however, and the apparent lack of cleanliness, what surprised us was how well maintained it appeared. Not a door hinge out of place, not a speck of rust. My wife inspected each angle of every piece of furniture, a basset hound searching for something amiss. "I love the aesthetic in here. It's a beautiful home," she cooed, running a hand along the fridge. "You can thank my wife for it. She refused to change a thing about this house. And, well, I just couldn't either when..." His sentence died out as the man stared out the window, just above the sink, into the woods. It's a little awkward to console a person you know nothing about, but I tried my hand at it anyway. "I'm sorry about your loss." He simply shrugged. "Bound to happen eventually. Just wish it would have been me, not her." I wasn't sure what to say to that. And for once, I was glad to see Ruth as she stepped into the kitchen. She stifled a gag. Ugh, horrendous. With each room we saw, my wife and I fell further in love with the home. Both bedrooms in the backyard carried the same energy as the rest of the place. A vignette of better days, waiting for another chance to be filled with happiness. Toward the end, however, the man presented the oddities of the house that, at the time, I looked over. How was I supposed to know this gift horse was a Trojan horse? House only got one shower. He swung open the guest bathroom, revealing simply a toilet, sink, and cabinet. I mistook the fear in his voice for reluctance to admit a flaw in the house. That's not necessarily a deal breaker for us, right, Sam? My wife didn't seem fazed either. I shook my head. "Nah, I don't think that's a problem. We'll manage." The owner looked at me solemnly. "I hope you do. Come on, let me show you what you'd be working with." He stiffly moved his way toward the main bathroom, leading us down the hall. He opened the door and motioned for us to take a look inside. Red. Each wall and floor tile was a deep reddish-orange hue. The sink cabinets, toilet, and shower with tub were pea green. I'd been vibing with the retro look up to this point, but something about this bathroom didn't feel great. Linda and I stared at the vibrant mess of the room before exchanging a glance at each other. Our eyebrows communicated what we were thinking. Remodel, we turned to face the owner, who made no attempt to step a single inch into the door frame. He had a 1,000-yard stare, keeping his eyes on the shower at all times. "So, how many offers?" I asked, snapping the man out of a daze. "None yet." He scratched his stark white mustache, and the wrinkles on his forehead multiplied with the furrowing of his brow in thought. On cue, Ruth spoke up. "You're not serious, Dash. Mom, please." Linda stuck her hand out to shush Ruth. I couldn't help but smile. That afternoon, we sat at his dining table and worked out our offer. The man seemed more than pleased with what he was getting, which worked for me, as I was willing to go a lot higher for what he was offering. He was planning on leaving the place fully furnished. "They won't let me take it to assisted living," was his explanation. The rest of the process was quick, with all inspections passed with flying colors. We had all the papers signed and sealed by the end of the week, ready to move in that weekend. That Saturday, we rented a mini trailer for all the stuff we want to keep and left what we didn't want as a pay it forward to the next tenant. Our excitement was contagious on the drive away from our apartment complex, despite knowing we were on our way to Ruth's house to pick up the keys. In true Ruth fashion, when she handed us the keys, she didn't decide on a congratulations or an enjoy your new home, instead opting to give us one last piece of her mind. "I think you could have done better." "Sure, Ruth." I nodded, taking the keys from her. "Linda will text you when we get there." We peeled out of her driveway, smiling and waving as her grimace trailed out of sight. Next stop, home sweet home. It was near dusk by the time we reached our isolated new digs, the last rays of sun stretching frantically above the forest as they sank below the tree line. We stood at the threshold of the front door and unlocked it for the first time. "Welcome home, Sam." "Welcome home, Linda." We began moving boxes inside, filling up the closet with things to sort through the next day. Passing by the kitchen, I spotted a piece of paper out of place, taped to the countertop. I picked up the note and read it, unaware just how much my life would change from that moment on. It read, "Rules for the thrumming. Hello, Sam and Linda. You seem like good people, but I couldn't wait much longer, so I had to go with whoever showed up first. I'm sorry. I hope you'll forgive me. It was nothing personal. There's something wrong with this house. Something lives here. Marie, my wife, called it the thrumming because of the noise it makes. It came with the house all those years ago, and it's been around for a long, long time. I'm going to give you the same rules I was given, in hopes it keeps you safe. Under no circumstances should you break these rules. I've seen what happens. Martha made one little slip-up, one mistake in old age, and now it's just me. I'm getting old, getting tired. Couldn't do it anymore. Maybe you'll be the one to find a way to stop this thing. Rule 1. From 10 seconds after the shower is turned on until 10 seconds after the shower is turned off, do not open your eyes. You need to keep your eyes closed so you don't see it. You'll know when it's watching you. Rule 2. When showering, only one person should be in the bathroom. More people means more chances of someone breaking the rules. Rule 3. When showering, keep the bathroom door locked so no one accidentally walks in and sees it. Rule 4. Ignore what it says to you. It will only get better at tempting you to open your eyes. Don't. I reread the message twice. What a weird, sick joke. I never took the old guy to be the type. I thought, I heard Linda come up behind me with a bag of groceries. What's that? Did he leave us a housewarming message? The curiosity was clear in her voice. Yes, very sweet. Hannibal Lecter will be tickled pink. I handed her the note and watched her face shift into a myriad of expressions, landing on confusion. What? She handed me back the note. I shrugged. Weird old guy. I feel sorry for him. I tucked the note into my pocket, and we continued to unpack our car. We didn't dwell too much on the strange note. It wasn't until Linda went to bed and I went to take a shower that I thought of it again, standing on the blood orange colored tiles. Staring at the shower, I hesitated, only to immediately be embarrassed by my hesitation. Poor guy was just confused. I tried to reassure myself. My hands fumbled with the shower knob, turning it on. I couldn't help but count. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. The water warmed up just enough for me to step inside. 4 Mississippi, 5 Mississippi, 6 Mississippi. I looked around the room. It was a normal room. Nothing's going to happen, I thought to myself. 7 Mississippi, 8 Mississippi. I admit I closed my eyes. I just felt like I had to. I'm so glad I did. 9 Mississippi, 10. Something shifted in the light of my closed eyelid, and then I heard it. Immediately, I understood why they called it the thrumming. Let me do my best to describe what I heard. First, close your eyes. While your eyes are closed, clench your inner ear muscles. It should sound like a constant, vibrating, pulsing hum in your head, like far-off thunder nestled in your brain. That's what the thrumming sounds like. I was so startled by the noise, I almost threw my eyes open. I don't know how I didn't. I had no idea what to do. I could feel something standing right outside of the shower. It was big. I could tell a lot of light was being blocked. I could feel it heaving, a cold gust breaking through the warmth of the shower in a rhythmic breathing motion. I scrambled to turn off the shower, and I counted again at 10 Mississippi. The rumbling stopped, the breathing stopped, and the shape blocking the light in my closed eyes was no longer there. I waited another 10 seconds to be safe before opening my eyes. Nothing. No footprints. No sign of the door ever being unlocked. The room looked exactly as it did when I entered it. I sprinted to my sleeping wife, not even bothering to grab a towel, and woke her up. "Linda, get up, we gotta go." I hissed, shaking her. She shot up, grumbling, wiping the sleep from her eyes. "What? Sam, what are you dash?" She glanced at my disheveled state. "What's going on? That creepy note about the shower?" "Yeah, it's real. We need to go." I haphazardly threw a shirt on backwards as I hopped on one foot into a pair of jeans. "Very funny, Sam. Can I go back to sleep?" She yawned, resting her head back on the pillow. I shook her awake again, sitting her up in the bed. "I'm telling you, it's real. Come on, I'll prove it." She followed me to the door of the bathroom, grumbling the entire time. "Okay, go in there, turn the shower on, and close your eyes. Don't open them." I reiterate, "Once I do this, then can I go to sleep?" She stretched. "You won't want to. Remember, keep your eyes closed. 10 seconds after the shower's on, to 10 seconds after the shower's off." I closed the door immediately when she entered the bathroom. I heard the water turn on. Nearly 10 seconds of water running. I heard one of Linda's yawns pitch into a squeak of surprise. Nearly immediately, the water turned off. About 15 seconds later, there was a scramble of footsteps before she threw open the door, pale as a ghost. What was that? She was wide awake. "I think we just met the thrumming." "Okay, so what do we do?" "We leave. And go where? Stay at a hotel? What if it follows us? Can it follow us?" "I don't know." We sat in the living room, jumping at every noise for the rest of the night. But nothing came to get us. No creature lumbered its way from the bathroom. No mass psycho burst from the closet. The only noise was a gradual birdsong from the forest outside as the dawn peeked through the windows. Our first move was to try to get hold of the previous homeowner, but it was like he vanished into thin air. We tried every old folks' home, assisted living place, and hospital in a wide radius, but none had a patient who matched his name. Next, we contacted Ruth. "Ruth, we need to put the house back on the market. There's a lot wrong with it. Termites, holes in the roof. The water heater is about to explode." I threw every lie I could out there. I could hear her smile stretch on the other side of the phone. "But Samuel, the inspections came back fine. If you don't like the look of the house, it's all right to admit it. After all, I did try to warn you, didn't I? But no one listens to me." I wanted to slam my head against the wall. "No, it's not that, Ruth. There are just a lot of things that we don't like about this house. Can't you help us out? There was a pause. Samuel, maybe you just need to give it some time. If you still feel this way after a few months, Dash. I hung up on her. We didn't have the funds for staying at a hotel for the long term, along with making payments on our new mortgage. So we were forced to live with it. For a month, we would take turns taking showers, and every time we would hear the thrumming in our heads, mixing with the water running down our spines. We could feel its presence, smell its breath. A boiled egg left in the sun for 3 days, garnishing a glass of curdled milk and sardine juice. We followed every rule. We kept our eyes closed, showered alone, and kept the door locked. We didn't fully understand Rule 4 yet. That changed. I had just come back home from a jog, catching Linda on the way out for groceries. She kissed me on the cheek, and I watched her pull out of the driveway, heading down toward the road. I made my way over to the bathroom to wash the layer of sweat that I was wearing like a coat. My new shower ritual started like normal. Water on, close eyes, hop in. I'd gotten better at feeling around for the soap and hair wash, though it was still tough to fully ignore the thrumming. Out of the bathroom, I heard the crashing of glass. Then Linda's voice. Shoot, Sam, I need your help. This vase got me good, I'm bleeding. Panicked about how badly she may have hurt herself. I was about to open my eyes to turn off the shower and quickly grab my clothes when I stopped. I just saw Linda drive off. Sam? Sam, please, it's pretty bad. I need a towel or something. It continued to speak, just like how my wife would when she's afraid. Slowly, I resumed my shower and the frightened voice outside dissolved into thrumming noise back in my skull. We had to be more careful from that day on. Knocks on the window, voices in home, and sounds of missed calls were occasionally sprinkled into our shower sessions. The thrumming was doing whatever it could to get us to take one little peek. As awful as it sounds, it became the new normal. Linda and I became good at blocking any distractions, focusing on our shower thoughts more than anything else. We tried not to think about how much worse it could get, or how much longer we'd have to deal with it. Instead, our focus was on research, trying to see if anyone else had dealt with a situation like this. We were in the middle of looking for exorcists in our local area when my wife got a frantic call from her mother. Apparently, Ruth got into an argument at a local restaurant. She decided to use some choice words toward a young waitress. And what's worse, this interaction was recorded by several bystanders. Linda, I don't feel safe in my own home anymore. The whole community has it out for me. Her harpy screech tore through the phone speaker. I mimed playing the world's smallest violin, grinning ear to ear. Linda glared daggers at me before speaking. Well, Mom, I'm really sorry to hear that, but I don't know what you want us to do about it. Well, I just need to get away for a bit. Let this all blow over. You got a spare bedroom there, right? My smile was obliterated. I shook my head vehemently, mouthing, no, 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 Dash. Mom, that's asking a lot. I know it is, dear, but listen, you still want to sell that house? Let me stay with you for a bit, and I promise, I'll get that house back on the market for you and get you as close to what you bought it for as possible. Linda and I stared at each other. I could tell we were on the same wavelength. This could be it. If we let Ruth stay with us for a week or two, maybe she could even see what we're dealing with. She could help get us out of here. All right, deal. Come on over. We'll get the guest bedroom ready for you. In the time it took her to come over, we ran through the game plan multiple times on how we'd try to explain what's going on in the house. We were as confident as we were going to be when we heard the knock on our door. I opened the door for her. Hey, Ruth, come on in, Dash. She pushed me aside, her hands full of 2 suitcases, packed to the brim. I haven't eaten yet. Did you have dinner yet? Get a pot of coffee started for me. She ordered, dropping her suitcases with a thud. Ruth, before all that, can we dash? Linda? Linda, where Dash? She spotted Linda, sitting in the conversation pit. Oh, there you are. Get these suitcases unpacked for me, will you? It's been such a rough day. I just want to eat, shower, and rest. Our eyes grew wide at the word shower. Mom, about that, can you come sit for a second? We need to talk to you about Dash. Yes, hun. We'll have plenty of time to talk after I've eaten and freshened up, Dash. My wife rose from her seat and pointed at the chair next to her. Moam, we need to talk now, or I'll throw your suitcases into Forest. Now, SIT. I've never heard her talk to her mother like that, but desperate times call for desperate measures, I guess. There was a moment where Ruth seemed stunned before she resumed her normal, miserable demeanor. All right, dear. You don't have to talk to me like that. I'm not a child. We're all adults here. She placed herself gingerly on the couch. I was biting my tongue so hard, I felt like I nearly tore it off. Linda took the lead. Mom, this house may be haunted or cursed. We're not quite sure. It doesn't matter. Point is, there's something bad with us here. We've been following some rules given to us by the previous owner, and it's the only thing keeping us alive. She pulled out the original note and handed it to Ruth, who was abnormally silent. Her eyes swept the small paper, line by line. Finally, she spoke. Do you take me for some sort of idiot? She snarled, throwing the paper at Linda. You have to make up some dumb monster, because you're too much of a coward to say you don't want me here. Ruth, enough, Dash. She wheeled her attention my way, pointing a finger at me. Shut your mouth. It was probably your idea, wasn't it? You good for nothing waste of space. The worst day of my life was the day you married Linda. She couldn't spew the vitriol fast enough from her mouth. She stood, fist-balled, face red. Mom, enough. We're telling the truth. We both stood, watching her move with a purpose down the hallway. Yeah, I'll be the judge of that. When nothing happens, I'll be on my way. So you don't have to deal with me ever again. Rage echoed alongside her footsteps as she threw the bathroom door open. MOM, no, wait. Linda cried. I grabbed her before she could chase after her. Linda, no, we can't go in there. I held her in place, facing her away from the bathroom. My gut lurched when I heard the shower turn on. 1 Mississippi. Shut your eyes, Linda. Quick. I tried to console her, as we both knew what was coming. 2 Mississippi. 3 Mississippi. Ruth's boisterous voice echoed from the small bathroom. Where's the thumbing? Huh? I don't see it. Is it shy? 4 Mississippi. 5 Mississippi. I just held Linda in my arms as she sobbed, already mourning the loss of her mother. 6 Mississippi. 7 Mississippi. I looked down the hall, into the bathroom, where Ruth stood yelling. A tiny part of me thought even someone like her didn't deserve whatever was about to happen. 8 Mississippi. 9 Mississippi. I turned and shut my eyes. You make me sick, you ungrateful Dash. 10 Mississippi. Ruth's rage-filled ramblings instantly became soul-piercing screams. I've never heard a human make those noises before. Shrieks of mortal terror so loud I could hear her vocal cords tearing. Squelched by the gurgle of what I assumed was blood, wet ripping sounds echoed down the hallway, punctuated by the heavy thud of something heavy hitting the ground. Linda and I sat in each other's arms for some time before I began to crawl on my hands and knees toward the bathroom. Eyes still shut. I needed to turn off the shower. I could feel the transition from carpet to cold tile, and as I moved forward, a warm liquid coated my hands. I followed the noise of the running water. Ignoring the reverberating hum in my head, my hands bumped into something on the floor, and I recoiled immediately, knowing exactly who I just made contact with. I awkwardly lifted myself up onto the edge of the tub and blindly groped the wall, finding the shower handle and turning it off with a whining hiss. I waited in that room until the thrumming was long gone. I won't describe to you what was left of Ruth. So that's where we are now. With all that's just gone on, Linda and I have decided to put our only plan left in action, which is why I'm writing this. We weren't looking for priests before Ruth arrived. We were planning this post. Whoever you are, you're probably a good person, but Linda and I can't handle this much longer, so I had to go with whoever reads this first. I'm sorry. I hope you'll forgive me. It's nothing personal, so I've hidden a rule from you. Our guess is that maybe whatever this thing is, it may not be tied to the house. I think the only reason it stayed here is because the old couple before us never broke Rule 5. It makes sense. Had they broken Rule 5 back in their day, the whole town would have come after them. The townspeople would have known who told them. But in this day and age on the internet, anonymity has its perks. So if my theory is correct, you might buy us some time, or maybe even make it leave us alone. In fairness, however, I want to give you the rules one more time. All of them. Rule 1. From 10 seconds after the shower is turned on until 10 seconds after the shower is turned off, do not open your eyes. You need to keep your eyes closed so you don't see it. You'll know when it's watching you. Rule 2. When showering, only one person should be in the bathroom. More people means more chances of someone breaking the rules. Rule 3. When showering, keep the bathroom door locked so no one accidentally walks in and sees it. Rule 4. Ignore what it says to you. It will only get better at tempting you to open your eyes. Don't. Rule 5. Do not tell anyone about this thing. The secret needs to stay with you in this house. Don't let it get out. Story 9. I'm a deckhand for a small, deep-sea fishing vessel. Something keeps mauling our catches. When I applied to be a deckhand of all things, I wasn't doing for the thrill of stormy nights out on the sea. To put it simply, I needed the money. Rent is tight, and my brother is in university. My father, who had been employed similarly previously, suggested it because of its opportunity for an interesting career. I am 19 and recently quit a soul-sucking retail job that paid dirt and rolled your face in it. So I applied. To my shock and partial dismay, I was accepted. Now I wish I'd said no. The day before I started, the company took me in for some kind of assessment. They asked me basic questions. Do you have any kind of disability? Are you physically fit? At the end of it all, I was scheduled to a boat the next morning. I remember those days like it was yesterday. The first day was all new and scary. I stepped onto an older vessel with a creaking deck and lined with peeling paint. Meekly, I walked around, inspecting equipment, partially frayed ropes and rusted chains backed by hand cranks and crab pots. Traditional fishing equipment, rods and lines, sat in pockets towards the bow, lining it. God help us all. I thought the looks were not appealing. You the new deckhand? A voice called out. It was hoarse and aged, like you could hear the seas in his voice. I looked up, and an older man stepped down from the cockpit onto the deck. His face was adorned with graying hair and a wispy beard. I nodded. Nice to meet ya. I'm Fred, the captain of the OL Girl here. He stuck out a wrinkled hand. I shook it, smiling. I'm Jason. It'll be nice to have an extra pair of hands. He patted my back. His surprising strength knocked me forward slightly. It can get hectic out there. I'll bet. I tried to show confidence that wasn't there. He took me further into the boat. 2 other people were there, working before the boat left port. One was middle-aged. A black goatee complemented a worn face with crow's feet and green eyes. Lean muscle covered in overalls and waterproof trousers. On the other side was a skinnier guy with a lankier frame. His wilder eyes complemented his yellowed teeth. I waved reluctantly. Don't let Gary get to you. The old man said, following my gaze. The other one's Ben. His cold exterior hides a heart of gold. That one. Ben averted his gaze, embarrassed. Since you're new, you'll be on basic deck duty for the week. Then I'll get you on the harder jobs. You'll also be helping retrieve nets and line if needed. Said nets were large and sprawled out on the stern. Just by looking at them, I could tell they had seen better days. We're set to sail in 5, so get comfy. Fred spoke. Nothing of note happened when we went out. We made our way about 10 miles from shore before stopping over a shipwreck, about half a mile down. Lower the lines. Fred called from the cockpit. I watched as Gary lowered a line intermittently filled with baited hooks into the water, straight down. Son, you want to hit the rods? It was Fred. I paused, thinking, I had never fished on this scale before. My biggest fish was 2 pounds off a pier somewhere. I thought giving it a shot would have been fun. Sure, which one do I take? I yelled back, whichever one catches your fancy. I picked the first one. It didn't take long before I felt a pull. I remember the burn in my arms as I reeled, but the time fell away due to the more interesting work. I eventually spotted a shape rapidly ascending in the water. I hauled the fish up. I may not fish, but I know a cod when I see one, and this one's a good size, roughly 10 pounds. Good stuff, kid. This voice was softer, but with a hint of gravel. Toss it in the storage behind me. I turned. The speaker was Ben. All right. I walked to the fish storage and placed it inside. The chill of the insulated cold storage numbed my fingers further than the oceanic wind already had. That wind felt odd, like it counteracted the glow of the sun in an unnatural, icy grip. It continued like this for a while. The fishing didn't change throughout the day. I pulled up a few more, including multi-haul and mackerel. The thought of placing live fish inside a cold box of them to slowly choke to death was kind of gross at the start. The rest told me it's part of the job. Then I pulled up my next fish. When it came up, I froze. It was mangled. It hung on my line still. Red dripped back into the water from surface wounds cut with surgical precision, revealing bones snapped and twisted in a gruesome caricature of a painful death. The wounds transferred into its form, ripped from the strain of a shattering skeleton. The fish itself was small. It would have been easy prey to any noteworthy predator, but I realized something. Predators strike to kill, not to torture. This wasn't a fail hunt. It looked like a kid performing surgery on their stuffed animal. A person tearing something apart to see what's inside. Hey, guys, look at this. I whisper. Both men turned to me. They saw, but were silent, like they didn't want to acknowledge it. I turned back to the fish. Its unmoving body was ever still, contradicting the rivulets of blood that leaked from it. The copper smell of its blood, paired with the sudden chill in the wind, sent a shiver up my spine. Then it twitched. Its bones cracked and rustled as its body flopped hopelessly. I remember the shock that coursed through me, and even worse fear when its eye moved. It switched its empty gaze to look directly at me, despite the animal obviously being dead. I could have sworn there was intent behind its eye. It looked at me not with soulless eyes you'd see in death, but sight burning with limbo. The worst part was that the look didn't feel feral or animalistic. It felt human, like I looked at this destroyed fish and saw human eyes looking back at me. Son, Fred's call snapped me out of it, and I shut my eyes. You all right? He called, stepping down from the cockpit and walking over to me. He put a hand on my shoulder. Happens sometimes. Crab pinchers can do some serious damage if they want something enough. I looked him in the eyes. They were not filled with his usual energy. They were tired, knowing, fearful. He masked it and smiled, patted me on the back again. You'll get used to it. Throw it back. And with that, he went to check on the other crew members, who brought in their own haul of regular, non-shredded fish. The rest of the day went smoothly. The weather held, and the haul was good enough. It didn't happen again until the next day. The walk to and boarding the boat remained the same. Setting sail was the same, but the spot wasn't the same. At first, I found that to be odd. The fishing was fine despite the crabs, so I asked Fred about it. Hey, wasn't the fishing pretty good back at the other wreck? Why did we change? I saw him hesitate, pursing his lips. Sometimes it's good to move down a wreck. It's sustainable fishing. He seemed honest, but something in that response didn't convince me. Oh, right. Fair enough. I respond. You'd be shocked how much the environment affects our waters, son. It didn't take long until I pulled up another mangled fish. This time it was an eel. Its entire body was bent in a spiral, its spine protruding from sharp angles where it was twisted, its maw open impossibly wide with broken teeth and ripped fins. The same stench hit me, along with the same cold wind. This one didn't move or look at me with that freakish stare. It did something worse. Before it breached the surface, I saw it fighting me below the waves. It looked healthy, alive, kicking. It was like it was passed through a shredder as it came out. That haul was accompanied by a prickle in my back. The feeling of being watched. I stared at the eel, waiting for it to unfurl and lunge at me or look at me with the same set of eyes. But it didn't. It stayed still, as if it wanted me to ponder why it was alive and then not. Throw it back. Fred suddenly appeared at my side. I hadn't heard him come over. I jumped. The eel slipped from the hook and fell out of sight. God, Fred, you scared me. I breathed, letting the adrenaline pool in my system. Sorry, son. I just had to make sure you threw that fish back. In hindsight, I should have confronted him right then and there. I should have asked him why he was being so off, but I didn't. The money was more important at the time. Ever since that eel, the feeling of being watched never left. I constantly felt as if the ocean itself was keeping an eye on me, as if I was being studied by an invisible mind. We didn't stay out on the water for much longer. Fred ordered us back to port. I got ready to leave the boat for home when I heard something. It was a yell, so far out into the distance you could barely make it out. Come back. And for some reason I wanted to get back on the boat, but I didn't. I walked home with an uncomfortable feeling crawling on my back. The day after was an actual living nightmare. We moved wrecks again under the same guise of sustainable fishing. We were further out into the ocean, deeper water, further from shore. The waves rocked the boat harder. The wind seeped into me with a deeper chill, and the very air held a sense of isolation. That didn't matter, though. It was time to fish. I chose to tidy the deck a bit before fishing, but when I ended up doing it, nothing went right. We all pulled up mangled fish. My first was a rockfish with its spines shoved through its head. Gary pulled up an eel-like fish with its teeth lodged in every bone. Ben and I both reeled in two, connected to each other by the tail, ripped and fused together mid-struggle. Fred's eyes held a desperation as he ordered us to return them before pulling me aside. Throw him back and do not think about it. He spoke, eyes pleading. We don't know why this happens or what it means, but what we do know is that if we ignore it, it happens less. Please try to stop thinking about it. He showed me an old scroll with an artist's depictions of an old vessels hauling fish like ours. One showed a whale harpooned, so torn to bits that it looked more like a shark in a whale's skin. He left me after that, and I kept fishing, forcing the shredded ones on my mind after they hit the water, and we started pulling more regular fish in, fish we could sell. I thought it was over. Then the water turned eerily calm, as if the waves noticed something and went silent. Confusion slammed into us, and we looked around. What is happening? I mumbled to myself, getting a shrug from Ben. Clouds moved in from every direction, blotting out the weakened sun. Then the water shifted. Something moved just under the surface. Something large, long, and heavy. It wasn't surface at first, but the ripples gave it away. I looked at the others. Ben's mouth was gaping, eyes wide. Gary looked on with a fleeting fear in his eyes. It began to move, circling. The feeling of being watched crept on me again, cold, crawling. My hair stood on end. This thing felt wicked. It moved up, its back breaking the surface. It was eerily familiar. I could have sworn I'd seen this figure before. It was larger than our boat. It continued to circle around us, and I looked up to Fred's cockpit. He was still. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead. He looked at me, begging, groaned. The thing's voice was so loud it shook the boat, sending ripples out into the water. Ripples through my very soul. It then spoke again. Its groans took on a more mechanical feel, pitching in tones and depth, as if it had learned its own language once more. It closed in, and I got a better look at it as it passed me. I saw the tip of its sloped tail, twitching as if it was testing its own body. I saw the skin on its back, and its long snout that split into a maw with multiple rows of teeth. It looked at me, the same snapping sounds as a cod enveloped me as I moved. That same empty gaze filled with twisted life. I almost leaned over to get a better look, but I didn't need to. It reared up and leapt for me. A roaring hiss escaped its lips as its mouth widened. I jumped back, falling backwards onto the deck. Pain split through my back and head, but I looked up all the same. Gums flashed in my direction as it reached for my position. Crack! Its jaws snapped shut before it fell back into the water with a mighty splash. Then the waves returned. The boat began to rock once more. I felt a pair of hands pull me up by my arms. "You all right, kid?" I turned. It was Ben. I couldn't say anything. Adrenaline was pumping too hard. If that happened again, I wouldn't even have time to yell. I understand. If a shark almost got me, I'd be silent too. He said, putting a hand on my shoulder. I paused. "Shark," I said, flabbergasted. "Well, yeah, it was a big one at that." He replied, confidently. My head spun. "No, Ben, that wasn't a shark." He looked at me, concern twisting his features. "Maybe we should head back. We're ahead of quota, and you need to rest." I failed to argue. The shock of it all forced me to sit down as the engine fired up. The journey to shore was filled with nerves. Fred was so silent I'd forgotten he was there, only dismissing us by walking off in the local pub. The first thing I did when I got home was call my brother. I had a hunch about where I'd seen the thing before. "Hey," I said, shaken. "Whoa, you all right?" "You sound scared." He asked softly. "Yeah, but I need to ask you something." I described the creature, from its size to its scales, listening as his breathing turned into focus. My brother, bless him, has an almost unhealthy obsession with prehistory. With that came interest in prehistoric animals. That sounds like a mosasaur. And with that, I remembered seeing it in one of his books. Serpent-like with paddle fins and a long snout. The description fit. But what you're saying doesn't sit right with me. I'm all into modern prehistoric sightings, but you have to be pulling my leg here, he said. "What? Why?" I asked, confused. "Well, mosasaurs lived in warm, shallow seas, not deep in ocean waters where it was too cold. And if one was in that area, there would have been hundreds of sightings before they have to surface a lot to breathe." I felt my entire body go cold. If there was a mosasaur out there, it was behaving completely wrong. I thanked him and hung up before he could ask more questions. The day after, walking the boat, I couldn't stop thinking about everything. The fish, the mosasaur, the lot. I tried to ignore it, like Fred had warned me, but I couldn't. And with that came more mangled fish. Some were turned inside out. Some were fleshy skeletons dripping with gore, and some were forcibly flipped until their spine broke. I couldn't stop thinking about it. No matter how many times I was implored to, the others started pulling them up too. Then the ocean itself called out to me. "Buddy." It was my father's voice, such distance that it barely resonated. It was coming from below. I peered over, seeing nothing but the inky dark of the ocean depths. Something was off. "Buddy," he called again. It definitely came from underwater, but it sounded like he was just calling from a distance. My eyes went wide. "Hey, but why didn't he come down here? It'll be fun." My dad never called me buddy, and that made my skin crawl. I saw a flicker of movement in the darkness, too quick to make out. I forced myself away from the rails until we got back to shore. The day after was yesterday. The way out was nerve-wracking, and the mauling didn't end. We only caught 3 usable fish before the waves calmed again. It was a slow change, one that you wouldn't notice unless you paid attention. The clouds darkened. Thunder rumbled in the distance. "Storm, Captain. Shall we head home?" Gary spoke for the first time. "We need a few more fish. We hold out until then." He yelled. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead. The storm drew closer. The waves got rougher, and rain started to fall. We got one more fish before it hit us. The storm was ravenous. It churned the ocean like it was boiling. It rent us still with wind so strong you couldn't see. And the sun was all but gone, only lightning illuminated the ocean. Through a flash, I saw the mosasaur's head breach the water, its groan barely audible in the wind. "We need to leave." I screamed at Fred, who was already firing up the engines. Another flash. The mosasaur was twice as close. The engine sputtered, then died. A cold wash pooled from my chest. The only thoughts I had now were my empty coffin lowering into ground. Died at sea. A third flash. The thunder split my ears. Something was floating on the surface, stealing all my strength. I forced myself over to the edge and peered out as it drifted closer. It was the mosasaur. its top and bottom jaws swapped, eyes gouged out and hanging into the water, fin bones protruding, a spine broken. The lightning gave glimpses of deep, red blood pouring from missing flesh. The mosasaur was mangled. Is that the shark? Ben asked. That's clearly a whale. A long dead one. Gary chimed in. I didn't refute. I was too afraid. The wind had been muffled by a constant ringing. Then another one's head popped out of water. Then another. More kept appearing, their snouts pointed up at the inky sky. The rain fell harder, water rolling around the boat as it rocked viscously. Now, there were thousands of them, grown. They all voiced at once, accompanied by wisps of another, quieter sound. They called into the storm, and I covered my ears. An extremely large wave then rocked the boat, and I lost my footing. Son, Fred screamed, still try in vain to start the engines. I felt one of the rods scratch my arm as I tumbled overboard. I crashed beneath the surface. The sudden cold seized my muscles. I tried to surface, gasping what little air I could, my muscles tired. I sunk below the waves. The mangled mosasaur was gone. Instead, millions more looked up at me from the abyss. My eyes, blurred and stung from the salt, darted as I spun around beneath the waves. As my lungs burned, they stared at me with familiar gaze. Their eyes were too intelligent, too human. They slowly advanced, creeping toward my trembling, freezing form. My tears mixed with the salt water. I looked down and saw an impenetrable blackness rising from underneath them. The presence bored a hole into my body. It felt as if the void itself stared at me as I stared into it. I was seconds from passing out when all the mosasaurs snapped in my direction. Then they each spoke in unison, mouths moving with the words. Wake up. Next thing I know, I'm on the boat, hacking up seawater. The clouds were lighter. I stood up. Nice to see you awake, kid. Ben said, smiling. I recoiled. I didn't understand how he was so calm. Did we make it out the storm? How am I back in the boat? Both Ben and Gary paused. What storm? And you never went overboard. You feeling okay? Gary spoke, head cocked. I looked away, catching a smile from Ben. A smile unusually stiff, forced. When the boat got back to port, I ran home, locked myself in my room, and started typing this. I know I'm going to sound crazy, but I'm going back out there. I'm going to work tomorrow, and I'm heading back especially with what I've written, but I'm going back out there. Something in me feels obligated to. I can't explain it. Despite that, I feel as if I've gained this fervor. Even now, I feel it looking at me, stare burning into my skin. I don't know what I awoke, nor why, but what I do know is that it is not any animal. I'm determined to find out. I want to know why it seems to have chosen me. If I find anything interesting, I'll post again. Though, still, I feel like that by knowing about it and sharing that knowledge, I'm pleasing it. Like this is exactly what it wants. If that truly is the case, I'm sorry, but I have to take that risk. Story 10. The Man Who Kept Knocking. I'm not writing this for attention. I'm writing it because my hands won't stop shaking at 1:30 a.m. and because every night that passes makes the details slide around in my head like oil on glass. If I don't put it somewhere, I'll start doubting what I heard and saw. And I can't afford to doubt it, not with how precise he is. I live alone in a one-bedroom on the 3rd floor of a brick building that used to be a hotel in the 60s. The hallway carpet still has that faded pattern of red paisley that never really looks clean no matter how many times the super runs of shampoo over it. My door is the 4th on the right after the stairs. It's got a newer knob and a deadbolt, but the frame is old wood and the peephole sits just a little too low, like it was drilled by someone guessing. The first time he knocked was a Thursday, a little after 1 in the morning. I was half asleep on the couch with a true crime documentary playing on my laptop The knock wasn't frantic. It was patient. 3 even taps, like a teacher asking a classroom to quiet down. Tap, tap, tap. Then nothing. I waited for whoever was to either knock again or say who they were. When neither happened, I went to the door and looked through the peephole. The hallway was empty, just the emergency light making that cold cone on the carpet. I almost laughed at myself. I've got neighbors who have parties at weird hours. Sound bounces around that stairwell and does strange things. I turned off the laptop and went to bed. At 2:34 I woke up because I dreamed the same 3 taps. When I lay still, listening to the building hum, I heard them again. Tap, tap, tap. I sat up, heart going like I'd run stairs. I didn't look through the peephole that time. I told myself if I didn't engage, whoever it was would get bored. The tapping didn't come back. On Friday it happened again, 1:30 a.m. The same 3 even knocks. I checked the peephole. Nothing. I messaged the building group chat to ask if anyone was having someone over who might be confused about the floor. No replies, just a thumbs up from a guy on 2 who's always drunk and thinks everything is hilarious. Saturday night, I made coffee at 11 and decided to wait out. I'd proved to myself it was just pipes or heat expansion or something physical that my brain was turning into a pattern. At 1:33, as if I'd set an alarm I didn't know about, I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. This time I slid to the door in my socks and looked through the peephole immediately, trying to catch whoever was moving away. Someone was there. He was tall and thin, wearing a long dark coat that looked too heavy for late spring. He stood perfectly still, facing my door, head tilted like he was listening to the wood. I couldn't make out details of his face. The emergency light hit him from the back and flattened everything. I was about to say something when he lifted his left hand. He held it at shoulder height and moved his index finger in a slow circle, then drew 3 short lines in the air, one after another. It wasn't a knock gesture. It was like he was writing on invisible glass. After the 3rd line, he put his hand down and stayed there, motionless. "Can I help you?" My voice sounded smaller than I meant it to. No response. He didn't even twitch. "Wrong apartment." I tried. "You've got the wrong door." He stayed another few seconds, then turned without hurry and walked toward the stairs. I watched him until he disappeared. The quiet after he left felt like the moment when a dentist takes their hand out of your mouth and your tongue is suddenly this strange muscle you don't know what to do with. I realized I was holding the door frame, so hard my fingers hurt. I called the non-emergency police line and explained. The operator was patient. She said she'd sent a car through, but unless he was forcing entry or making threats, there wasn't much they could do. I know how that sounds online. The cops didn't care. It wasn't like that. They cared. It's just that standing in a hallway is not a crime, no matter how much your stomach flips over it. Sunday I bought a door security bar, the kind that braces on the knob, and one of those wedges you kick under the door. I told myself I'd sleep better. I also covered the peephole with a strip of electrical tape after reading an article about reverse peephole viewers. I'd never thought about that before, that from the hall, with the right little lens. Someone could see you as if the hole was a window. Sunday night the knocks came at 1:27. 3 even. I didn't look. I sat on the floor in the dark kitchen with a butter knife in my hand and felt exactly like a kid hiding from a game where the rules were unclear. Monday afternoon I caught the super Manny in the basement by the washers and told him. He's in his 50s, soft-spoken. Reads the paper in a lawn chair out back when the weather's decent. "You get a look at his face?" he asked. "No, just the coat, the height, the way he moved his hand. Like, I made the small circles with my finger and felt stupid copying someone else's gesture." Manny didn't laugh. He took a folded piece of masking tape from his pocket and put it over the peephole, smoothing the edges. "Don't take that off," he said. "People do weird things. You call me next time." That night I messaged a friend, Jonah, and asked if he'd stay over. He brought a sleeping bag and a baseball bat and told me if the guy knocked, we'd open the door and ask him what the hell his problem was. At 1:24, the tapping started. We were both awake. Jonah stood up, bat in hand. I put a hand on his arm and shook my head. We waited, not breathing. The taps didn't come again. Jonah stayed until 3, making jokes about how I'd made him miss his bedtime for a ghost with good manners. Tuesday afternoon, there were 3 small chalk marks on my doorframe at shoulder height. Pale, like someone had brushed a carpenter's pencil there and then wiped it partially away. I ran a paper towel over them. The towel came back gray. I know what you're thinking. I could have missed those since I don't inspect my doorframe every day. You're right, I don't. But I cleaned around the knob when I put the tape on the peephole. They weren't there then. I set my phone to record audio that night. I put on a chair by the door and turned on airplane mode so nothing would cut the recording. I shut off all the lights, wedged the door, braced the bar, and tried to breathe like I wasn't listening with every atom of my body. At 1:19, I heard footsteps on the recording, precise and slow. They paused. The mic picked up the faintest rasp. Fabric against wood? Then tap, tap, tap. After 10 seconds, 3 taps again, lighter. Then a whisper. The whisper was so soft I had to max the volume and press the phone to my ear to make words out of it. I could be wrong, but I swear I heard, "You're there." I sent the file to Jonah and to Manny. I called the police again and played part of it over the phone. This time, 2 officers came by, walked the halls, and knocked on my neighbors' doors, waking a couple people who were understandably annoyed. They didn't find anyone in the building who matched my description. They suggested I get a simple motion camera and pointed me to a model that stores clips locally. I bought 2 the next morning, one facing the door from the inside, one covering the living room and kitchen. I know that sounds paranoid, but the price of not knowing what happens between midnight and 2 was higher than a couple plastic cameras and a micro SD card. I also bought a cheap doorbell camera for the outside, but since it's an interior hallway and not my property, I didn't install it. I was trying not to be that tenant everyone resents. Wednesday, the knocking came at 1:07. 3 knocks, then 3 lighter, then nothing. The interior camera caught the sound perfectly and caught me standing perfectly still in my hallway with a ridiculous knife in my hand. Manny texted at 1:10. Police on the way. Don't open. They came, went floor to floor, checked the stairwell. One officer asked if he could sit inside my apartment in the dark for a few nights and wait with me. He wasn't promising anything. He just said, "Sometimes people like this escalate. Better we see it." He sat with me Thursday night. He told me to call him T. He was maybe mid-30s. Built like he actually did the gym memberships the station gets, and he spoke quietly in the way people do when they've done a lot of night shifts. We sat on my floor with the lights off and whispered about unrelated things. So I keep breathing. At 12:58, he touched my arm to still me. I heard it too, a soft scuff outside, like a shoe toe against carpet. Then his head tilted. He took out his phone and typed something quickly to whoever was parked on the street. The 3 taps came at exactly 1 o'clock. T didn't move toward the door. He looked at the peephole and then at me at the strip of black tape I'd left over it. He stood and pressed his palm flat to the door, then took it away and showed me his hand. There were 3 faint gray lines on his skin. "Chalk," he mouthed. The taps didn't come again that night. At 1:15, T's phone buzzed. He checked it and whispered, "No one on the stairs, no one on camera at the entrance. If he's in the building, he tailgate and is staying out of view." He left around 2. Before he went, he looked at my deadbolt. "You need longer screws in your strike plate," he said. "Those 1/2-inch ones don't grab. Get 3-inch into the stud." I spent Friday with a screwdriver and U-tube. Longer screws, a secondary slide lock at the top, a little adhesive alarm that would shriek if the door moved while armed. I covered the gap at the bottom with a heavier draft stopper. It looked ridiculous. It also let me close my eyes for more than 15 seconds without my heart sprinting. Friday night there was no knock. Saturday none. I started to relax in the way you do after a fever breaks. I left the bathroom light on, fell asleep at midnight, and woke at 1:33 to my phone buzzing. Unknown device detected moving with you. I sat up so fast, I smacked my head on the wall. The phone showed the pop-up Apple. Gives you when it feels an air tag. You don't own traveling with you. I don't own an air tag. I hit play sound the way the notification tells you to. A faint little chime came from the hallway. No, not the hallway. The chime came from inside my apartment, somewhere near the door. I turned on every light. The chime played again. I traced it to my coat, hanging on a hook by the door. In the inner pocket, tucked into the lining, there was a small white circle the size of a coin. I have never bought one. I don't let friends hang coats here. I don't even remember when I last wore that coat. I stood there too long with it in my hand. Like if I crushed it, the problem would be over. I didn't crush it. I followed the instructions, disabled it, photographed it, emailed myself a serial. At 1:40, 3 taps on the door. Not loud, deliberate. I stood a foot back from the door and said, "I'm calling the police." The whisper came, so soft I wasn't sure it was a voice. "I know." I called. T came with another officer. They took the air tag. They took my statement. They were careful not to promise more than they could do. T said he'd push for a warrant for the owner information. He said, if he's dumb enough to register in his own name, he's dumb enough to make a mistake. Keep everything in writing. Don't engage. The next morning, I was packing a bag. I decided to stay at Jonah's for a while. The apartment felt wrong. That's not a legal term or a useful descriptor, but it is the best I have. It felt like I had already been entered and cataloged, like a drawer someone had measured and closed again. I took down the strip of tape over the peephole to check the lens for scratches. The tape was thicker than it looked. Manny had folded it in on itself to make it easy to peel. When I pulled it free, something fell with it. Something tiny and silver stuck to the adhesive. I bent to pick it up and realized I was holding a piece of polished metal no larger than my thumbnail. A peephole reverser, the kind you press to the lens to see inside. This one was the other half, flat, designed to stick to the door and act as an anchor for a magnetized viewer. There was a faint ring around the peephole where someone had glued, then pulled off something. I don't know when he did it. Maybe the first night, when I opened the door and saw nothing and stepped forward into the hall for 2 seconds. Maybe the second, the idea that it had been there while I had spoken, while I had pressed my own eye to the lens. My stomach turned hard enough I had to put my hands on my knees. I left. I took the cameras, the laptop, a duffel of clothes, and left. On my way out, I saw 3 fresh gray marks at the height of my shoulder on the other side of the door frame. I didn't wipe them. Jonah's place is a 4th floor walk up across town. He gave me the couch and made dumb jokes and ordered too much takeout. I wanted to be grateful. Mostly I listened for footsteps in the hall that never came. We put my door camera up facing his apartment entrance as a joke. It felt important once it was there. Sunday afternoon, T called. He said, careful and official, that they'd requested owner information tied to the AirTag serial. He also said that if I was leaving the apartment, I should let the super know, because if the person was targeting me specifically, they might follow. Don't post about it, he said. People escalate when you make them characters. I didn't post. I didn't tell the building group chat, either. I wanted to believe that changing location breaks a pattern. That night, at 1:33, the camera by Jonah's door recorded 3 even taps. You can see Jonah sit up in his sleeping bag on the floor in the living room and look at me on the couch. You can see us freeze. The knocks don't come again. 10 minutes later, the camera records a single frame of motion, a dark shape too close to the lens to resolve. The motion sensor triggers an 8-second clip, but the frame after the first one is just the empty hall. Whatever passed in front of it did, so almost against the lens. We didn't open the door. We didn't sleep. At 4:20, the camera recorded something else. A folded piece of paper pushed under the door from outside with a stiff business card. On the paper, printed in neat block letters, "You're doing this well. Thank you." T took the note. He dusted it. He told us, don't respond. Don't reward. He said the note might be evidence of harassment. He said he'd asked for the building's exterior cameras. He didn't have good news. The exterior cams are fake. The landlord put up domes to deter package thieves and never wired them. On Tuesday afternoon, Jonah went to work and I took a shower. When I came out, my phone had that same notification. Unknown device detected moving with you. I swore out loud, followed the chime, and found the AirTag in my backpack's front pocket. The backpack had been in Jonah's entry closet since I arrived. We tore the closet apart. There was a hairline scratch around the inside of the knob plate. So fine, I would never have noticed it if I weren't inches from it. Jonah hadn't given anyone else a key. He swore he hadn't. We believe him. I believe him. It doesn't matter. The scratch is there. This man has a method for getting into places quietly, swiftly, and leaving no sign the casual eye would catch. Or he has a key for older knobs, or he's very good with a pick. We changed the knob that night because doing something felt like the only way to breathe. Wednesday, I went back to my apartment in daylight with Manny and 2 officers. We went through my stuff. Manny showed me the hinge pins on my door. You can tap them out from the hallway on older frames even if the door swings inward. Manny replaced them with security pins in 15 minutes using parts he had in a plastic organizer. He said, almost apologetic, "Should have done these already." One of the officers, a woman with eyes that seemed to notice everything, pointed at the baseboard heater, and then at a tiny hole drilled in the wall above it at ankle level, behind where my shoe rack used to sit. The hole was the width of a drinking straw. There was nothing in it when she probed with a swab. She looked at me and didn't say anything at first. Then, "You live alone. You keep your blinds shut. Someone wanted a vantage you wouldn't think to cover." That night, I slept at a motel with the security bar flipped over the knob and a chair under the handle, because that's what you do when you've run out of locks to buy. A family on the other side of the wall watched the show at a volume that would have driven me crazy any other week. The noise made me feel like there were witnesses. At 1:33 exactly, there were 3 taps on my door, that even, patient rhythm. I lay on the bed and looked at the ceiling and cried without sound like a dog who knows whimpering gets him smacked. At 1:40 a.m., folded piece of paper slid under the door and stopped against the rubber threshold. The paper was hotel stationery. I didn't move. I waited for an hour and then opened the door to a hallway that was normal in the way a set is normal when you step behind it and it's just plywood. I picked up the paper. You learn fast. The front desk had cameras. Real ones. The night manager showed the police the footage. At 1:21 a.m., man in a baseball cap checked in with a card that processed. He carried no luggage. He walked to a room 2 doors down from mine. At 1:32, he walked out of that room, turned to my door, stood with his head tilted, and did not knock. The camera doesn't have audio. After 40 seconds, he turned around and walked back to his room. At 3:10, he left without checking out. The card was prepaid and untraceable. The name was fake. I moved in with a cousin an hour out of the city after that. I stopped going to my apartment, except in the daytime with someone else. Manny sublet it to a student 2 months later. I didn't want to deposit back. I didn't want to stand in that hallway with the paisley carpet and explain why the strike plate had 4 giant screws. There are things I could add that would make this sound like a story. I could tell you that 2 weeks later an apartment across the river was broken into at 1:30 a.m. and the woman who lived there woke up with someone standing in her doorway. That's true. I could tell you that she described 3 light taps on her door in the nights before it happened. Also true, I could tell you that I got an email from an account with no name containing a single attachment. An 8-second clip of my living room from the angle of the peephole, me standing inside with a knife, my mouth moving as I asked through the door, "Can I help you?" That happened too. The file metadata was wiped. The email auto-deleted the day after I opened it. T still texts sometimes. He checks in like a friend. He keeps it professional. Reminds me not to post identifying details. Not to tell a version that turns this man into a myth. They read, he told me once. They get better. He says they might have enough to get a warrant if the AirTag owner information connects to a human with an address. He doesn't promise. I asked what he thinks the hand gesture meant. That slow circle, the 3 little lines. He stared at me a second and said, "Counting his nights, or counting yours." I bought things I never thought I'd own. A simple alarm system, 2 real door bars, window pins, a wedge that will break your foot if you kick it wrong. I sleep with my shoes by the bed and my wallet in my jeans pocket on the chair, because T said if you have to run, you should have your ID and keys. My cousin pretends to be annoyed at the extra deadbolt I paid to have installed on her door. When she goes to work, I check her peephole twice. There's a piece of tape over it. Blue painter's tape. I replace it every few days, like a ritual. Sometimes when I'm standing in her kitchen pouring coffee, I practice not reacting to imagined sounds. I count to 3 and make myself set the cup down and pick it up again, like I am rehearsing a movement the way he rehearsed his. Some days I hate that. Some days it makes me feel like I'm not only being acted upon. If you live in an older building with a door that is mostly wood and a peephole that isn't beveled from the inside, put tape over it. Replace the screws in your strike plate with longer ones. Set your phone to notify you about air tags. It won't stop someone with patience, but it will at least make you feel like you are a participant in your own life. I'm writing this tonight because it's quiet where I am, and because 2 hours ago I got a text from an unknown number. Just a photo. The photo is a blurry shot of a motel hallway with paisley carpet and a numbered door with a chair wedged under the handle from the inside. My chair. The timestamp is from months ago. The caption says, "Thank you for helping me practice." I don't know if he means practice getting in, or practice not knocking, or practice making people like me into a set of predictable responses. Maybe all of it. Maybe the point was to see how much of my life he could occupy by doing almost nothing at all. 3 taps, a mark on wood, a little piece of metal you'd miss, unless you knew to look. It's 1:29 now. I can hear the refrigerator motor, the distant hiss of a car on the highway, my own heartbeat in my throat. I'm going to put my phone on the table by the door and start recording. I'm going to stand back from the peephole with the tape still on it, and I'm going to breathe. If there are 3 taps, I'm not going to open the door. If there aren't, I'm still not going to open it. If you're reading this and thinking I'm feeding him by writing it down, you're probably right. If you're reading it because you've heard something at your door around same time every night, and you needed to know you're not the only one keeping track of seconds in the dark, then I'm writing it for you too.